I'm not going to be able to turn my mind off. It doesn't land like something new. It lands like something familiar, almost personal, like a voice you've heard so many times that you don't even question where it came from anymore. Quiet, subtle, but heavy enough to shift everything because your body reacts before your mind does. Your chest tightens before the sentence even finishes. Your breathing gets shallow, like there's less space inside you. Your shoulders lift a little, holding tension you're not fully aware of. And it's not dramatic, it's subtle but constant. And that matters, because you don't go into full alarm. You slip into a low, steady tension, a kind of almost alert that never fully turns off. You try to move on. You pick up your phone, unlock it, open an app, scroll without really seeing anything. Close it, open another, maybe go back to the first one. Nothing sticks. Nothing really holds you. Because the problem isn't a lack of stimulation. It's that something is running underneath, taking up space that no distraction can fill. And then the thought comes back. I'm not going to be able to turn my mind off. A little clearer now, more present, like it's making sure you hear it. Maybe you're on the couch after a normal day. The TV is on, but you couldn't tell someone what's playing. The images change, but you're not following. Or you're lying in bed, lights off, staring at the ceiling of your apartment, waiting for your body to settle, waiting for the tiredness to do its job. Or maybe you're in your car, engine off, parked after a quick stop at Target, your hands still on the wheel. No rush to get out, just a few more minutes there, but those minutes aren't rest. They're filled with something that doesn't stop, because when the outside slows down, your mind speeds up, like it's been waiting for that space. Like it's saying, now that you stopped, I come in. And the strange part is, it doesn't feel like a choice. It doesn't feel like something you started. It feels like something that just happens, like a pattern on its own. Have you noticed that? That it doesn't feel like you're thinking, it feels like you're being thought. And that changes the feeling, because it's not just discomfort, it's a loss of control. And that weighs more, because if it were just a random thought, you'd ignore it. But this one doesn't act like a random thought. It shows up with authority, like a diagnosis. I'm not going to be able to turn my mind off. And then everything around it starts to reorganize. Your body goes into a low alert. Your breathing loses rhythm. Your jaw tightens, and the impulse kicks in. Fix it. Stop it. Make it go away. You try to take a deep breath, in, slower, hold, out, again, but it doesn't quite land. You try to distract yourself, think about something light, a video, a conversation, but your mind doesn't stay there. It comes back, it always comes back. I'm not going to be able to turn my mind off, and every attempt that doesn't work becomes evidence, proof. See, it doesn't work. And that creates a very specific kind of exhaustion. Not physical, not visible, but it's there, a constant drain, like you're always putting in effort. Even when you're still, you keep living, you wake up, do your morning coffee run, maybe stop by Starbucks, order the same thing, automatic, no thought. Drive the same highway, same traffic, same turns, same pauses, go to work, answer emails, sit through meetings, deliver what needs to get done. Maybe you go to the gym, keep the membership active, do the basics, you function. From the outside, everything looks normal, but inside, there's a constant noise, a background activity that never fully goes quiet. Even when nothing is actually wrong, it always feels like something is pending. Something you forgot, something that could go wrong, something not fully handled. And it doesn't come as panic. It comes as a state, a background. And in the moments that are supposed to feel like rest, it becomes more obvious. At night, in the silence, in the spaces between things, that's when your mind seems to take over, like it's been waiting all day for that moment. And maybe you've thought, why can't I relax like other people? Or so why does my mind never stop? And those questions don't come with panic. They come with a tired kind of acceptance, like you've already tried. Breathing, distraction, maybe even therapy. And things get a little better, but never fully go away. And slowly, that sentence stops being questioned and starts becoming identity. This is just how I am. My mind is just like this. Yeah, and once it becomes identity, you stop looking into it, you start adapting. Avoid too much silence, avoid empty moments, avoid situations where you know it might show up. Without realizing, you build your routine around it. But even then, it still finds you, because it's not about the environment, it's about something active inside. And there's something important here. That thought, that sentence, it didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't show up just to mess with you. It has a function. Even if right now it just feels like weight, at some point it was trying to do something for you, maybe protect you, maybe prepare you, maybe keep you from being caught off guard, and maybe you've never really stopped to look at that. Not to fix it, not to get rid of it, just to see it without rushing, without urgency. What is that sentence actually trying to do when it shows up? What is it trying to prevent? What does it believe might happen if your mind actually did go quiet? And what if, just for a moment, you didn't try to shut anything off? If you didn't try to control it or improve it, just observe, stay there for a few seconds and see what happens, without interfering, without correcting, just notice. What shows up when you don't react right away? You don't have to answer that now, just notice. Because what feels like anxiety has a logic to it, and that logic has been running a lot longer than you think. Ryan wouldn't say he has a problem. If you asked him directly, he'd probably give a small smile and say, it's just anxiety, nothing serious. And he means it. Like he said that line so many times, it's become a way to close the subject, because from the outside, his life works. He lives in a decent apartment, organized enough, in a quiet complex. He's got his usual spot in the parking lot. He knows exactly how long it takes to get to work, depending on traffic on the highway. Nothing unpredictable, nothing chaotic. He works at a stable company, not his dream job, but it pays well, it's secure, it has structure. Meetings, emails, deadlines, he delivers, he responds, he figures things out. He's the kind of person his manager trusts, the kind of person the team relies on. He's got PTO saved up that he barely uses. Not because he can't, but because stopping feels off. Like if he stops, something opens up too much. And too much space has never felt good to him. His mornings are predictable. He wakes up, grabs his phone while still in bed, scrolls for a few minutes, gets up, stops by Starbucks, orders the same coffee, no thinking. They know his name. They know his order. In the car, he takes the same route, same highway, same slowdowns, same exit. He puts on a playlist or a podcast. Something to fill the space, always, because silence isn't neutral for him. Silence calls something, and during the day, it's less obvious, because movement covers it. Tasks take up space. Conversations pull his attention outward. But there are small moments in between where nothing is happening right away, and that's where it shows up. Between meetings, after he sends an email, before starting the next task. Just a few seconds. Almost invisible. And in those seconds, it comes. I'm not going to be able to turn my mind off. Sometimes quick, almost like a reflex. Sometimes clearer, heavier, but always familiar. And with the thought comes a feeling. Not panic, not anything extreme, something quieter, a slight tightening in his body, a light pressure in his chest, that sense that something isn't fully under control, even when everything is. You ever feel that? Like something is just slightly off, even when nothing's actually wrong. Ryan feels that a lot. And over time, he's learned how to deal with it, not by facing it, but by adjusting around it without realizing. He avoids silence. In the car, there's always sound. At home, something is always on. TV, YouTube, a podcast, even if he's not really paying attention. It's more about filling the space, not leaving it empty. Because when the space is empty, his mind steps in. And when his mind steps in, it's not always quiet. At night, it's more obvious. He gets home, eats something simple, sits on the couch, turns the TV on, But he doesn't just watch. He grabs his phone, scrolls while watching, one layer of distraction on top of another, like one isn't enough. And even then, there are moments he drifts. The screen is there, but he's not following anymore. His mind is already somewhere else, and the thought comes back. I'm not going to be able to turn my mind off. And with it, this quiet kind of preparation. He avoids going to bed early. Just one more episode. Just a few more minutes. Not because he's not tired, but because he knows what happens when he lies down. You ever notice that delay? That moment where you could rest, but you choose not to? Like you're avoiding running into something? Ryan does that almost every night, and when he finally goes to bed, his body is ready to shut down, but his mind isn't. He lies down, turns off the light, closes his eyes. For a few seconds, it feels calm, but then it starts. Disconnected thoughts, quick images, short flashes, things he needs to do tomorrow, small details that suddenly feel important, conversations that haven't even happened yet, and it all starts running without a clear direction. And then the thought shows up. I'm not going to be able to turn my mind off, and with it, a sense of defeat before anything even happens, like the night is already decided, like he already knows how it's going to go, before he even tries to sleep, and his body follows. His breathing gets shallow, his chest tightens more. He turns to his side, adjusts the pillow, pulls the blanket, trying to find physical comfort for something that isn't physical. And that's frustrating, because there's nothing clear to fix. And the next day, he wakes up, functional, capable, just a little more tired. A kind of tired that coffee doesn't fix, that never fully goes away, and it builds. Normal days start to feel heavier. Small decisions take more energy. Simple things, replying to a message, scheduling something, starting a task, feel heavier than they should, not because they're hard, but because he's already carrying something inside, and that starts shaping how he lives. Quietly, he begins to avoid what he can't predict. Deeper conversations, situations where he might be evaluated, moments where he doesn't control what happens, not in obvious ways, in small adjustments. Small detours, small, I'll get to it later, small delays. Even good things get pulled into it. Invites, plans, trips. Something in him hesitates, not in words, in sensation. A slight tension in his body, a discomfort he can't quite explain. And he listens to it, without realizing he's listening. And he responds, avoids, postpones, rearranges. And that's how his life gets shaped. Not by big decisions, but by micro-reactions, and the thought stays there. I'm not going to be able to turn my mind off, in the car, in the shower, standing in line at CVS, waiting at a drive-through. Anytime there's space, it shows up, and over time, it stops feeling like a thought, and starts feeling like a fact, a trait, something he doesn't question anymore. This is just how I am. But it didn't start that way. At some point, this was a response, an attempt to deal with something, not a definition of who he is. And maybe the most important part is that he never went back to that beginning, not to relive it, just to understand it. What is his mind actually trying to avoid when it refuses to shut off? What does it believe might happen if it did? There's something there, something that made sense, something that's still being protected, and maybe you're living something like this too, functioning on the outside, but with a constant undercurrent inside. And maybe you've never really stopped, not to fix it, but just to look, without rushing, without trying to land on an answer, just notice. Because when you really start to look, what felt random starts to show a pattern, and that pattern isn't there by accident. There's a point where things start to make a little more sense. Not because they got simpler, but because they stop feeling random. I'm not going to be able to turn my mind off. The sentence is the same, but the way you hear it shifts. Before, it felt like a fact. Now, it starts to feel like a pattern. And that's a quiet difference, but a deep one. Because a fact, you accept. A pattern, you can observe. And once you start observing, you begin to notice things that used to slip right past you. Ryan didn't have some big breakthrough. It wasn't a dramatic moment of clarity. It was quieter than that, almost easy to miss. He started noticing that the thought didn't come out of nowhere. It always showed up after something. A micro silence, a pause, a moment without distraction, like his mind had been waiting for that space. And when it found it, it stepped in. I'm not going to be able to turn my mind off. But this time, he didn't react right away. He didn't try to breathe better, didn't try to distract himself, didn't try to fix it. He just stayed. And that let him see what comes after the sentence, because the sentence isn't the beginning. It's just the doorway. Right after it, something else starts. Quick images, short flashes, fragments, him forgetting something important, a conversation going wrong, a small mistake turning into something bigger, someone reacting in a way he didn't expect, nothing concrete, nothing actually happening, but all of it carrying a very specific feeling. You need to be ready. And that changes everything. Because now, it doesn't feel like random anxiety. It feels like a system, something active, something trying to predict, to simulate, to rehearse possibilities, to avoid being caught off guard. Have you ever noticed that your mind isn't just overthinking, it's trying to get ahead of something, like it's always one step in front, trying to stop something that hasn't even happened yet? Ryan starts to see a deeper pattern. It's not just the content of the thoughts, it's their function. They're not there just to fill space. They're there to prevent mistakes. And to prevent mistakes, his mind has to stay on, active, running, no pause. And then the sentence shifts. I'm not going to be able to turn my mind off. It stops sounding like a limitation and starts sounding like an instruction, an order disguised as a problem. Don't turn off. Stay alert. Not now. It's subtle, but powerful, because if it's an instruction, then there's a part of you that's giving it, a part that believes that turning off isn't safe. And when you look at it that way, the question changes. It's no longer, why can't my mind stop? It becomes, why does a part of me not want it to stop? And that question opens something new, because any part that insists has a reason, even if now it feels like too much. Ryan starts to notice small hints of where this came from. Not one big memory, more like fragments, old sensations, moments where he wasn't ready, a presentation where he froze, an awkward silence, a response that didn't come when he needed it. Nothing extreme, but enough. Enough to teach something, that not being prepared has a cost. And after that, the training began. Quiet, repetitive, mental rehearsals, running scenarios, playing things out ahead of time. Next time I'll do better. Next time I'll know what to say. Next time I won't mess up. And it worked. He started doing better, more prepared, more ahead of things, more in control. And his mind learned something dangerous. Thinking more, fewer mistakes. And when something works, it doesn't just go away. It gets stronger. It becomes automatic. It turns into a pattern. And over time, it starts to feel like identity. I'm just someone who overthinks. But that's not identity, that's adaptation. And every adaptation creates a part inside you that keeps it going, a part that takes over when it needs to. That turns the system on. That makes sure you don't relax too much. That keeps you safe. That part is the shadow, not in some mystical sense. In a functional one, it runs on its own. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't announce itself. It just steps in. And for Ryan, it has a clear job. Anticipate to protect, simulate to avoid mistakes, control to reduce risk. And to do that, it has to keep his mind running all the time, even when it's not needed, even when there's no real threat. And this is the key point. That part doesn't know the difference between past and present. It runs on what it learned. And what it learned is, it's better to think too much than to be caught off guard, so it keeps the system on, even when you're safe, even when nothing's happening, and when you try to stop it, It reads that as risk, because in its logic, if you stop thinking, you might mess up. So it pushes harder, more thoughts, more images, more loops. You try to turn it off, it speeds up. You try to control it, it escalates. And that's not sabotage, it's protection, just badly calibrated. And that changes everything, because you stop fighting something broken and start looking at something that's working too well. Working out of context, working past what's needed, and that reveals the trap. The more you try to control your mind, the more you feed its logic. You prove that thinking is necessary, that there's something to solve, and it responds by doing more, and the cycle keeps going. Thought, control, more control. Each loop reinforcing the last, until it feels impossible to step out. But here, there's an opening, because the moment you see the pattern, you're not completely inside it anymore. There's a small gap, and that gap is where change begins, not by eliminating the thought, but by changing your relationship to it. Seeing that the sentence isn't absolute truth, it's a system activating. The images aren't predictions, they're simulations. The urgency isn't real, it's conditioned. And when you start to see that, even for a few seconds, something shifts. You don't stop the system, but you stop automatically obeying it. And that small break is enough to create space. And space changes everything, because without space, everything becomes reaction. With space, and there's choice, even if it's small, even if it's unstable, but real. And it's right at that point that the next move becomes possible. Not forced control, but a different way of standing in relation to your own mind. And that changes the whole game in a way you might not fully see yet, but you're starting to feel. There's a point where trying to control it starts to lose its meaning. Not because you gave up, but because you notice something more precise. Every attempt to control it feeds the very thing you're trying to stop. And that's counterintuitive. Because for a long time, it felt logical to try harder, breathe better, think positive, distract yourself, force it to shut down. But if you slow down and really look, you start to see a quiet pattern. The more you try to turn your mind off, the more it reads that as a reason to stay on. Because the act of trying to stop it carries a hidden message. This matters. This needs to be fixed. This can't keep going like this. And that part of you hears it, not your words, your behavior, your effort. And it interprets it in a very simple way. If he's trying this hard to control it, there must be a risk. So it does more thoughts, more simulations, more repetition, not to mess with you, to protect you, even if right now it's exhausting you. Ryan starts to see this, not as an idea, but in real time. A normal night, he lies down. The thought shows up, I'm not going to be able to turn my mind off. And automatically, the old impulse kicks in. Take a deep breath, adjust his body, try to relax. But this time, he pauses, not to do something better, but to not do the same thing again. And that's different, because it's not effort, it's an interruption. He doesn't try to control his breathing, doesn't try to change the thought, doesn't try to replace anything. He just notices, okay, that's here. And that sounds small, but it isn't. Because for the first time, he's not reacting automatically. He's seeing it. And when you see it, something separates. The thought is still there. The sensation is still there, but you aren't completely inside it. There's a slight gap. And in that gap, there's a new option. Do nothing. And at first, that's uncomfortable because your body expects action. Your mind expects correction. Everything in you was trained to fix it, to act, to solve. But this time, nothing happens. And for a few seconds, your mind tries to push harder. More thoughts show up, more images come in. The feeling intensifies a little. Like it's testing you. You're really not going to do anything. And this is the critical point, because this is where you usually go back to the pattern. You try to control, you try to get out. But if you stay, even for a moment, something different happens. Without resistance, the thought doesn't grow the same way. Without the fight, it doesn't gain the same strength. It's still there, but it doesn't escalate. And that shifts the whole dynamic. Ryan starts to notice this directly. The thought still shows up, but it doesn't carry the same weight. The images still come, but they don't hook him the same way. And slowly, the system starts to lose intensity, not because it was forced to stop, but because it's no longer being fed. And that reveals something essential. What fuels anxiety isn't the thought itself, it's your relationship to it. How much you react, how much you try to control, how much you step into the loop. Without that, the system is still there, but it weakens. And there's a subtle distinction here. This isn't ignoring it. It's not pretending it's not happening. It's noticing without stepping in, seeing without following, letting it pass without holding it. And that requires something different than control. It requires tolerance, tolerating discomfort without acting right away, tolerating uncertainty without trying to solve it, tolerating the thought without responding. And that's a practice. It won't be perfect. It won't happen every time, but it will happen. And every time it does, even for a few seconds, the pattern weakens because you break the automatic chain, thought, reaction, escalation, and it becomes thought, awareness, space. And that space is where calm starts to come back, not as the total absence of thought, but as the absence of constant friction. Ryan starts to notice this outside of bed too. In the car, when his mind starts speeding up, he doesn't reach for the volume right away. He notices first. Standing in line, when that subtle tension shows up, he doesn't grab his phone immediately. He stays for a few seconds on the couch. When silence appears, he doesn't fill it instantly. He watches, and that slowly changes everything, because your mind learns through experience, not explanation. And the new experience is not every thought needs a response. Not every feeling needs to be fixed. Not every activation needs action. And that starts to recalibrate the system. That part of you is still there, but it begins to get a different signal. Maybe this isn't that dangerous, and that lowers the intensity. Not instantly, but over time. And here's the shift that changes everything. You don't need to win against your mind. You don't need to shut anything off. You just need to stop feeding the cycle. And that's much simpler and much harder at the same time. Simple because it doesn't require some complex technique. Hard because it goes against everything you've learned so far. But it works because it hits the root, not the surface. And over time, something unexpected happens. The gaps get wider. Silence feels less threatening. Your mind slows down, not because it was forced, but because it doesn't need to run all the time anymore. And you start to feel something you might not have felt in a while. Real moments of rest, even with thoughts still there. And that changes how you see it, because you realize peace of mind isn't the total absence of thoughts. It's the absence of constant struggle. It's being able to be with your own mind without going to war with it. And when that starts to happen, even in small doses, you begin to see maybe the problem was never thinking too much. Maybe it was how you learned to respond to your thoughts, and that opens a completely different path, not control, but relationship. And that's what actually sustains change over time.